Hey guys, it's Colin with Ghost Train Comics, and today we're delighted to bring you the history of 2000 AD Prog by Prog Part 3. And today we're going to be looking at Progs 101 to 150. Covers the period of time between February 1979 to February 1980. This era is widely considered the kind of golden era awakening of 2000 AD. The Galaxy's greatest comic featured the debut of the ABC Warriors, the legendary conclusion to Judge Dredd's The Day the Law Died saga, and the monumental first appearance of Judge Death and Psi-Judge Anderson in Prog 150. Let's get into it. Some of the key story arcs that occurred during this period, the climax of The Day the Law Died and the debut, like I mentioned, of Judge Death and Psi-Judge Anderson in Prog 150 were huge in terms of historical dread and overall UK comics culture. Start with the flagship star of Judge Dredd. Progs 101 through 108 see the epic conclusion of The Day the Law Died. Scripted masterfully by John Wagner, writing as John Howard, and illustrated by powerhouse talents like Mick McMahon, Brian Boland, Ron Smith, and Brett Ewins. Dredd overthrows the tyrannical Chief Judge Cal with the help of Fergie and the citizens of Mega City 1. After wrapping up shorter hits like The Black Plague, Wagner and artist Brian Boland deliver a seismic shift then in Prog 150. And the introduction of Judge Death and the Dark Judges, well, the whole lore of the Dark Judges, was significant enough, but also somebody who was intended as kind of a one and done character of Psi-Judge Cassandra Anderson went on to also become one of the most beloved characters and one of the kind of key standout female characters in British comics over the years as well. Boland's razor-sharp line art rendered Death's terrifying undead aesthetic and chilling detail. Prog 150 set the gold standard for dread horror to this point. ABC Warriors built on the foundations that came over with Pat Mills and a whole slew of excellent artists such as Mick McMahon, Kevin O'Neill, etc., building on Roadbusters and acting in a weird space in between prequel and sequel, as it would go on to kind of touch on different time periods. But it was basically the war years that the Roadbusters robots would look back on, like Hammerstein and some of the others. Spinning out of Roadbusters, the story follows Hammerstein as he assembles a squad of war-hardened atomic bacterial chemical combat robots, hence the acronymical title, the Magnificent Seven, to tame the savage frontier of Mars. So, like I mentioned before, Roadbusters was a kind of a demolition squad of broke down ex-war robots in a future where robots were used as soldiers, as workers, laborers, etc. Very similar to the way Blade Runner showed replicants. But this is looking back to the glory days that Hammerstein would regale the other robots in the Roadbuster squad with, notably Rojo as the sarcastic kind of sewer-mouthed droid, as he was variously called, who would make fun of this. So it's interesting actually looking back and seeing what Hammerstein did in his prime. The strip was made legendary by the rotating visual style. It wasn't always intentional, but it was the demands of a weekly comic. But Mills did bring on a Hall of Fame lineup of artists to highlight each robot. For me, Mick McMahon is the defining artist on this, up until Bisley. Even then, Bisley is unbelievably good and redid the designs so beautifully that he's definitely massively impactful. But for this era, for the original era of ABC Warriors, as much as I love Dave Gibbons on a lot of things, and it's very hard for any artist to come even close to Gibbons' quality, Mick McMahon is in a class of his own. In terms of unique styles, he reminds me of Frank Miller, Keith Giffen, Bill Sienkiewicz, and there's a few, Howard Chaykin, people who you could spot their style a mile away, but who still have given themselves plenty of room to evolve. And McMahon has evolved so interestingly, just cutting away any excess fat from his art. It was heavy metal sci-fi action at its finest, and when it did come back, about 6 years later, about 1987 to 88, I seem to remember, with Bisley's black and white artwork, which we thought was the best thing he'd ever done, the best thing we'd seen, up until he then did the full color painted Slonia, which was just unbelievable. And having crossed over from the merged Star-Lord comics, Strontium Dog officially cemented itself as a core 2000 AD staple during this block. Written by Wagner, again with another pseudonym, T.B. Grover, and drawn by co-creator Carlos Ezquerra, Prog's 104 to 118 gave us Journey into Hell. Mutant bounty hunters Johnny Alpha and his partner Wolf Sternhammer get sucked into an alternate dimension of demonic torment. A lot of fun. This is really kind of Wagner and Grant really cutting loose, and Carlos, as always, just never stops with the creativity and with the new ideas and with the brilliant visuals that we just took for granted as kids, reading the stuff like, isn't all comics this good? People like Ezquerra and Bellardinelli. Another character who came in the last block, Robo Hunter Sam Slade, and the Verdus saga is really one of the super strong establishing arcs that made him a fan favorite. If you want a humor mixed with noir detective sci-fi, Robo Hunter was the strip for you. Written again by John Wagner as T.B. Grover, with stunning hyper-detailed artwork by Ian Gibson and early parts by Jose Ferrer. The Verdus storyline ran right through Prog's 100 to 112. Cigar-chomping bounty hunter Sam Slade lands on a planet populated entirely by malfunctioning, neurotically insane robots. Gibson's intricate droid designs remain a highlight of British comic art. The VCs from Prog 140 onwards, written by Jerry Finley Day with art by Cam Kennedy, a gritty sci-fi military epic following Jupe and his crew battling the alien. The VCs remains one of my favorites and one that sticks in my mind from reading these as a kid originally. Cam Kennedy and Jerry Finley Day's gritty space war, just perfect. It's come back a few times since, and it's inspired a ton of other kind of adventures. Most notably, I feel Bad Company had the biggest kind of VC's vibe. There's a few other ones, but the Stainless Steel Rat, like I mentioned, this one debuted as well, Prog 140. And this was adapted by Kelvin Gosnell from Harry Harrison's famous sci-fi novels, with brilliant artwork by Carlos Ezquerra depicting interstellar conman Slippery Jim degrees. Black Hawk came from Tornado. I'll talk about that because I do have a separate video on the history of Tornado. It was another like Star-Lord, but nowhere near the same quality level, but I have a particular fondness for it. It was my comic as a kid, and it was that being merged into 2000 AD that led me into discovering things like ABC Warriors, VCs, Judge Dredd, and all of the other titles that we're talking about, which leads us here to me doing this still so many years later, the impact that those stories had on me. Black Hawk was a Roman centurion abducted by aliens to fight in galactic gladiatorial arenas brought to life by writer Alvin Gaunt and the alien-style artwork of Massimo Ballardinelli. Black Hawk wasn't bad. They did take what was an historical adventure from the Tornado days, and they just added a sci-fi filter to it, and added in, of course, the amazing art of Ballardinelli. And then Dan Dare, Dave Gibbons, Tom Tully, and Massimo Ballardinelli finished off Dan Dare. It kind of went bye-bye from the title after this. It had been long since eclipsed by Judge Dredd as a preeminent modern representative character of 2000 AD and of that era of the early 80s. Dan Dare never quite fit in. He had some interesting takes within, the first 100 and so issues that he was in 2000 AD, but they then shoved him over to the modern Eagle, and there's been a few other iterations since, most notable ones being the Grant Morrison, the beautiful Rhiannon Hughes art, and the very kind of political positioning of that one. And then the Garth Ennis miniseries was one of the most recent ones, and there's been another version of it since then. But it's one of those kind of eternal British characters people will always try and reinvent on some level or another. Disaster 1990 was an interesting sequel by Jerry Finley Day, story of Bill Savage, you remember from Invasion, who was one of the kind of foundational strips that kicked off 2000 AD when it started. This one, he's surviving a flooded post-apocalyptic Britain. After this, he was revived in the 2000s, just as Savage, which was a great strip for the first few kind of volumes of Progs 101 to 150 were the crucible where 2000 AD defined its identity as a subversive and heavily stylized, fast-paced and utterly rebellious publication. Creators like Mills, Wagner, Ezquerra, Brian Boland, and Dave Gibbons weren't just making a weekly comic, they were building an empire. What was your favorite strip from this 50-issue run? Are you Team ABC Warriors or are you Team Judge Death? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, as always. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming deep dive into Progs 151 through 200. Thank you so much again for your time, guys, and I hope that you will join us for the rest of this series. Thanks. Bye-bye.